They excluded me from the family gathering. Then the priest handed me the sealed envelope with my name. The lawyer's office smelled of old books and polished wood, but the air was heavy, like a storm about to break. I stood in the corner, my hands gripping my worn leather purse, watching my family seated around the long oak table. My cousin Linda sat at the head, her manicured nails tapping the surface, her lips curled into a smug half-smile. My brother Tom slouched beside her, his eyes fixed on his phone, avoiding me entirely. Aunt Claire whispered something to my cousin Mark, and they both smirked. They thought they had it all sewn up. Grandma Rose's estate, her cozy house in upstate New York, her savings, everything. I was the outcast, the one they'd sidelined for years. But then Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, cleared his throat, and the room went silent. "Audrey," he said, his voice steady but sharp, cutting through the tension. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope, my name written in Grandma's elegant, looping handwriting. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Linda's smile vanished, her eyes narrowing to slits. Tom's head snapped up, his phone forgotten. Aunt Claire's hand froze mid-gesture. My heart pounded as I stepped forward, my fingers trembling as I took the envelope. What was this? Why hadn't anyone told me? The weight of their stares pressed against me, but I refused to flinch. This wasn't just about money. It was about years of being pushed aside, dismissed, erased. Hey, before we go further, I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment with your city and country. Let's see how far this story reaches. I didn't open the envelope right away. My fingers traced the edges, feeling the faint ridges of Grandma's handwriting. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as memories flooded back. The family gathering they'd forgotten to invite me to. The one where they'd schemed to divide Grandma's legacy without me. I could still hear Linda's voice that night, sharp and calculated. "Audrey doesn't need to be here. Let's keep this simple." But now, holding this envelope, I felt a spark of something. Hope, maybe, or defiance. Whatever was inside, it was Grandma's last word, and I wasn't going to let them take that from me too. Let's go back a bit, to when things felt simpler, before the betrayal cut so deep. Growing up in our little town of Willow Creek, New York, Grandma Rose's house was the heart of our family. Her white clapboard home, with its sagging porch swing and overgrown rose garden, was where we'd gather for Sunday suppers. The smell of her apple pie would fill the kitchen as she'd tell stories about her childhood, her voice warm and steady. I was the one who stayed close, helping her weed the garden, driving her to the pharmacy, or sitting with her when the arthritis made her hands ache. I loved those moments. Her laugh, her quiet wisdom, the way she'd call me her rock. My cousins, Linda, Mark, and Sarah, were different. They'd show up for Christmas or Easter, always in a rush, their visits brief and performative. Linda, with her city job and designer clothes, would breeze in, give Grandma a quick hug, and leave before the coffee was cold. Mark and Sarah weren't much better, always too busy with their lives in Albany. My brother Tom was the worst. He'd charm Grandma with a flashy smile, promise to visit more, then disappear for months. I didn't mind being the one there for her. It wasn't about expecting anything, it was about love. But over time, I noticed the cracks. Linda would make snide remarks about my small life as a schoolteacher, as if her corner office made her superior. "Audrey, you're wasting your time fussing over Grandma," she'd say, her voice dripping with pity. Tom was no better, rolling his eyes when I mentioned helping with Grandma's bills or fixing her leaky faucet. "She's got nothing to give, Audrey," he'd scoff. "Move on." It hurt, but I brushed it off. Grandma saw it all. She'd pat my hand and say, "You're the one who matters, Audrey." I held on to that, believing it meant something. Then came the family gathering last July, the one they conveniently forgot to invite me to. I found out from Mrs. Delaney, the neighbor, who saw Linda's sleek SUV parked at Grandma's house. Curious, I called Tom, but he brushed me off, saying it was just a small thing. I drove over anyway, my stomach twisting as I parked down the street. Through the window, I saw them, Linda, Mark, Sarah, Tom, Aunt Claire, laughing, eating, planning. I stood on the porch, hidden by the shadows, and overheard Linda's voice. "Audrey doesn't need to know. She's got her little life. We'll handle the estate." My chest tightened. I went home and cried, not for the money, but for the betrayal. They'd erased me from the family. When Grandma got sick a few months later, I was the one at her bedside, reading her favorite Emily Dickinson poems, holding her frail hand. Linda sent a bouquet of flowers once, with a generic card. Tom called a handful of times, always asking if Grandma had mentioned anything about her will. When she passed, I thought we'd grieve together, that maybe her death would bring us closer. I was wrong. The funeral was where the real storm began, and I was about to walk right into it. The funeral was held at St. Mary's Church in Willow Creek, the same place Grandma Rose had attended every Sunday for decades. The pews were packed with neighbors, old friends, and distant relatives, but the front row was reserved for family. I sat there, alone on one end, my black dress feeling too tight, my eyes stinging from tears I refused to let fall. Linda sat at the other end, her posture perfect, dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, more for show than sorrow, I suspected. Tom was next to her, fidgeting, checking his watch like he had somewhere better to be. Aunt Claire and my cousins Mark and Sarah whispered among themselves, their glances darting toward me, sharp and cold. The air was thick with unspoken words. As the priest spoke about Grandma's kindness, I caught Linda leaning toward Tom, muttering, "She's probably expecting a handout." My stomach churned, but I kept my gaze on the casket, draped in white roses. I wanted to scream that I'd been the one there for Grandma, not them, but I bit my tongue. The real blow came after the service, at the reception in the church basement. I was pouring coffee when Linda sidled up, her voice syrupy but venomous. "Audrey, you must be so tired from all your efforts with Grandma," she said, loud enough for others to hear. "Don't worry, we'll take care of everything now." Her smile was a knife, and the small crowd around us went quiet, their eyes on me. I forced a nod, my throat tight. "I just wanted to be there for her," I said softly. But Linda was already turning away, her heels clicking as she rejoined the others. Tom avoided me entirely, engrossed in a conversation with Mark about Grandma's house, how it could be sold, how the money could be split. No one mentioned me. It was like I wasn't even there, like I'd never spent countless nights at Grandma's bedside or driven her to every appointment. The room felt smaller, the whispers louder, and I knew then that they'd already decided I was out of the picture. The next day, we were called to Mr. Harrison's office for a preliminary meeting about Grandma's estate. It wasn't the official reading of the will, that was scheduled for later, but a chance to discuss logistics, as he put it. I arrived early, my hands clammy, still shaken from the funeral. The office was small, with dark wood paneling and a single window letting in gray light. Mr. Harrison, a wiry man with wire-rimmed glasses, greeted me with a handshake that lingered a second too long. "Audrey," he said, his tone oddly gentle. "I'm glad you're here." Something about the way he said it made my skin prickle, like he knew something I didn't. The others filed in, Linda, Tom, Aunt Claire, Mark, and Sarah, all business, their faces a mix of impatience and anticipation. Linda took charge immediately, asking Mr. Harrison about the value of Grandma's house and savings. "We need to move quickly," she said, her voice crisp. "The market's hot right now." I sat quietly, my hands folded, feeling like an intruder. But then something strange happened. As Mr. Harrison shuffled through his papers, a small folded note slipped out and fell to the floor. He didn't notice, but I did. It was in Grandma's handwriting, just like the envelope I'd seen later. I leaned down to pick it up, but Aunt Claire beat me to it, snatching it with a quick, "Oh, just trash." She crumpled it and stuffed it into her purse, her eyes flicking to me with a warning. My heart raced. Why was she so quick to hide it? What was on that note? I didn't say anything, but the moment stuck with me. Later, as we left the office, I overheard Mark muttering to Sarah, "She didn't mention anything about Audrey, right?" Sarah shook her head, but her expression was uneasy, like she wasn't sure. I pretended not to hear, but my mind was spinning. Grandma had always called me her rock. She wouldn't just leave me out, would she? That evening, I got a call from Mrs. Delaney, the neighbor who'd tipped me off about the family gathering. "Audrey," she said, her voice low, "I saw something odd before Rose passed. She was with that lawyer, Harrison, and she looked secretive, kept saying your name." I thanked her, my pulse quickening. Something was going on, something my family didn't want me to know. I went to bed that night clutching the memory of Grandma's warm hand in mine, wondering what she'd hidden in that envelope and why it had my name on it. The truth was out there, and I was determined to find it, no matter how much they tried to keep me in the dark. As I sat in my small apartment, the weight of that sealed envelope still heavy in my mind, memories of Grandma Rose flooded back. They weren't just warm moments. They were proof of the life I'd built with her, the one my family ignored. I remembered the winter when I was 25, driving through a snowstorm to get Grandma's prescriptions because Tom said he was swamped with work. He wasn't. I saw his car at the local bar later that night, music spilling out the windows. Grandma knew. She'd looked at me over her steaming tea and said, "You're the one who shows up, Audrey. Don't forget that." There was another time, a few years back, when Linda came to visit. She'd breezed into Grandma's house with a flashy gift basket, all cellophane and overpriced chocolates, acting like she was the devoted granddaughter. I was there, scrubbing dishes in the kitchen, when Linda started asking Grandma about her savings. "You should invest it, Grandma," she'd said, her voice smooth. "I know people who can double it." Grandma had smiled politely but later whispered to me, "I don't trust her, Audrey. Too many dollar signs in her eyes." I'd laughed, thinking it was just Grandma being cautious. Now, I wasn't so sure. The hardest memory was the summer I turned 30. Grandma had a bad fall, and I moved in for 2 months to help her recover. I cooked her meals, helped her walk to the garden, and listened as she reminisced about Grandpa. My cousins didn't visit once. Tom called to say he'd stop by soon, but he never did. One night, Grandma grabbed my hand, her eyes bright despite the pain. "You're my heart, Audrey," she said. "Don't let them make you feel small." I'd nodded, tears in my eyes, but I didn't realize how much those words would mean later. My family had always treated me like I was invisible, but Grandma saw me. She saw everything. Those moments stung now, knowing how my family had plotted behind my back. The family gathering they'd excluded me from wasn't just a party. It was a strategy session to cut me out. I'd given Grandma my time, my love, my everything, and they thought they could erase that. The crumpled note Aunt Claire hid, Mrs. Delaney's cryptic words, the envelope with my name, it all pointed to something bigger. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for the truth, for what Grandma wanted, for the years I'd poured into her without expecting a dime. The day of the official will reading arrived, and I walked into Mr. Harrison's office, feeling like I was stepping into a lion's den. The room was the same, dark wood, single window, stale air, but the tension was electric. Linda sat at the table's head, her posture rigid, her eyes gleaming with confidence. Tom was beside her, cracking his knuckles nervously. Aunt Claire, Mark, and Sarah filled the other chairs, their faces a mix of impatience and entitlement. I took a seat at the far end, my hands clasped tightly, the memory of Grandma's words, "You're my heart," keeping me steady. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses and began. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Rose Elizabeth Carter," he said, his voice formal. He listed the smaller bequests first, a few $1,000s to the church, some jewelry to Aunt Claire, a vintage car to Mark. Everyone nodded, satisfied, but their eyes stayed locked on him, waiting for the big prize, Grandma's house and savings worth over $500,000. I braced myself, expecting the worst. Then it came. The primary estate, including the house at 142 Maple Street and all remaining financial assets, is to be divided equally among my grandchildren, Linda Carter, Mark Carter, Sarah Carter, and Thomas Carter. The room erupted in murmurs of approval. Linda's smile widened, triumphant. Tom let out a relieved sigh, already pulling out his phone. Aunt Claire patted Sarah's hand, whispering, "Told you it'd work out." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My name wasn't mentioned. Not a word. I stared at the table, my vision blurring, the weight of years of exclusion crashing down. They'd won. I was nothing. The room went quiet, and I could feel their eyes on me, some smug, some pitying. Linda leaned back, crossing her arms, her victory complete. I wanted to run, to scream, to demand why Grandma would do this to me. But I stayed still, my hands trembling in my lap. Mr. Harrison coughed, flipping to the last page of the will. "There's one final matter," he said, his tone shifting, almost hesitant. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out the sealed envelope, the one with my name. "Rose left this for Audrey to be opened privately after the reading." The air froze. Linda's smile vanished. Tom's phone slipped from his hand. My heart stopped. What was Grandma about to say? The silence in Mr. Harrison's office was deafening, the kind that makes your ears ring. My family's eyes were locked on me as I held the sealed envelope, my name in Grandma Rose's elegant handwriting staring back at me. Linda's face was a mask of barely contained fury, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. Tom shifted uncomfortably, his earlier confidence gone. Aunt Claire, Mark, and Sarah sat frozen, their expressions a mix of shock and suspicion. I tore open the envelope with trembling hands, pulling out a single sheet of paper. Grandma's words leapt off the page, and my heart stopped. "Dear Audrey," I read aloud, my voice shaking but clear. "If you're reading this, it means they've tried to cut you out, just like I feared. You were my rock, the one who stayed when others only showed up for what they could take. The will read today was a test, a decoy. My true will is with Mr. Harrison, in a separate file, and it names you as the sole heir to my estate. House, savings, everything." The room erupted. Linda shot to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. "This is absurd," she shouted, her voice cracking. "She can't do this." Tom's face turned beet red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "What? No way, that's legal," he stammered. Aunt Claire gasped, her hand clutching her pearls, while Mark and Sarah exchanged frantic whispers, their eyes wide. Mr. Harrison remained calm, pulling a second document from his briefcase. "Rose amended her will 3 months before her passing," he said, his voice steady. "She wanted to see who truly cared for her, not her assets. This document, dated later than the one I read earlier, leaves the house at 142 Maple Street and all financial assets, valued at over $500,000, to Audrey Carter." Linda's face twisted, her voice venomous. She was manipulated. Audrey must have tricked her. But even she knew it wasn't true. I'd been at Grandma's bedside, not plotting. Tom slammed his fist on the table, muttering, "This is a scam." Aunt Claire tried to speak, but her words dissolved into a cough. Mark and Sarah just stared, their earlier smugness replaced by stunned silence. I sat there, clutching the letter, tears streaming down my face. Not from greed, but from the weight of Grandma's trust. She'd seen me, every quiet sacrifice, every late-night drive to her house, every moment I'd chosen her over my own life. The room spun with chaos. Linda's threats to sue, Tom's angry pacing, Aunt Claire's feeble apologies, but I felt a strange calm. Grandma hadn't just given me her estate, she'd given me justice. Mr. Harrison handed me the new will, his eyes kind. "Rose was adamant, Audrey. This is yours." I nodded, folding the letter carefully, my heart full. They could scream all they wanted. Grandma's truth was undeniable. The weeks after the reading were a whirlwind. Linda didn't let it go easily. She called me daily, her tone swinging from rage to fake sweetness, asking if we could split things fairly. I listened, but my answer was always the same. Grandma made her choice. Eventually, she stopped calling, her threats fading into silence. Tom showed up at my apartment one rainy evening, his jacket soaked, his face sheepish. "I didn't mean to leave you out, Audrey," he mumbled, staring at the floor. "I just got caught up." I didn't argue. I just said, "I know, Tom," and closed the door softly. Aunt Claire sent a long letter, full of apologies and excuses about misunderstandings, but it felt like too little, too late. Mark and Sarah vanished entirely, their texts unanswered, their presence erased from my life. I moved into Grandma's house on Maple Street, the creaky porch swing welcoming me home. The garden was overgrown, but I spent weekends tending it, planting roses just like she taught me. Her savings, enough to pay off my debts and give me breathing room, felt like a hug from her, a chance to live without the constant weight of bills. I didn't flaunt it. That wasn't Grandma's way, and it wasn't mine. I hung her letter in a simple frame above the kitchen table, where I'd sip coffee and remember her voice. "You're my heart, Audrey." Those words carried me through the loneliness of a family that had fractured long before the will. Looking back, the betrayal cut deep, but it showed me who they really were. Grandma's estate wasn't just about money, it was about loyalty, about showing up when it mattered. My family thought they could erase me, but Grandma's love was louder than their whispers. I learned that blood doesn't guarantee trust, and sometimes the ones who hurt you most are the ones who fade when the truth shines through. If this story hits home for you, maybe you felt that sting of being overlooked or betrayed. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my place? And if you connected with this, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss more stories like mine. Let's keep sharing these moments that remind us what really matters.